It's the second meeting. My name's Rob Gray. I'm the campaign coordinator for Back Heathrow. And together here we have residents from the communities around Heathrow. We have representatives from local businesses. Some of you just live locally. Some of you work at the airport. Some of you used to work at the airport. Some of you run high street businesses. Some of you represent organisations which in themselves represent hundreds of businesses. But the one thing that we all here have in common is that we care about the airport. And we want the airport, this fantastic international hub airport, on our doorstep to succeed. And so I'm just going to quickly run through very, very briefly the agenda. So I'm going to talk to you for about five minutes or so on Back Heathrow. Then I'm delighted to say that we've got Nigel Milton from Heathrow Airport who will be talking to us about the view from Heathrow and expansion plans from Heathrow and why it's so important that Heathrow succeeds. And after Nigel, we've got one of our supporters, Sarita, who will be just talking to us for a minute or so about her own personal involvement with this campaign and why she got involved. And then my colleague, finally Anna, will talk to you about how you can get involved in a number of very, very simple ways, hopefully pain-free ways, how you can get involved and support the campaign. And then what I really want to do is then have a fairly sort of long, or as long as it takes, Q&A session to allow you to ask your questions. You can ask any of us questions. I'm sure you've got questions for Nigel, which is why we're grateful that he's here. And also, as well, if you want to just have your say and suggest ideas which you would like to see us do as a campaign on your behalf, because we're all part of the same team here. We're so reliant on each other, and I'm reliant on you. So thank you very much for attending. So. Back Heathrow is just over 4 months old now, so we're still a baby. It was set up with, one thing I should say by the way, before I go on, we have got a camera here, don't be alarmed. Don is one of our supporters and he's filming this for his very clean YouTube channel, I'm told. But Don has been kind enough to turn up and film this. And also we, I think, have a couple of journalists here from the local papers as well. They may wish to speak to you later. If they do, just tell them what you feel about the airport. So Back Heathrow, 4 months old, was set up initially with funding from Heathrow Airport, which we were delighted about. It has since gone on. I'd be very disappointed if Heathrow couldn't back a campaign called Back Heathrow. And we've also got secured support from businesses, business groups, we've got union support, and of course we've got resident support as well, in the form of help and also in the form of donations, which is fantastic. The background reasons why Back Heathrow was set up, really. If you go back to 2010, the last general election, Heathrow was all set to expand. The coalition government came in and said we'll have no new runways anywhere in the UK. Of course, when they then got into power, there was also a recession, and people realised that actually probably there is a bit of a problem here. So what government decided to do was set up a... Hi there, come in. Are you okay? Would you like a seat? You okay? Please come in. Please come in, it's okay. So what the government decided to do was set up something called the Independent Airports Commission. And this commission was to find a solution to the problem, because we all know Heathrow is full, we know there's a problem. But what this process did was that it flushed out some other rather unsavoury elements, including, of course, our dear friend the Mayor of London, who wants to close Heathrow and open up a brand new hub airport. Also, it flushed out various attitudes locally. The leader of Hillingdon Council, Ray Puddifoot, who wants to see Heathrow pretty much closed or at least redeveloped, which in our view would have a disastrous effect on local communities. So there was a threat there, but also there were opportunities. There was some local polling of thousands of people carried out, and it showed what many of us suspected, that there was a significant majority of support for Heathrow in the local communities. 3/4 at least thought that the benefits of Heathrow outweighed the disadvantages. And also there was a majority of support for the expansion of Heathrow. So with this knowledge of local support and with possible threats to the airport, Back Heathrow came into being. What do we want to do? We want to highlight the consequences of no growth at Heathrow. We want to safeguard thousands of existing jobs. We know how many jobs the airport overall, directly and indirectly, 114,000 jobs. We want to safeguard the jobs and create new jobs as well. So we want to help them do that. And build prosperity, by the very definition of that, build prosperity in the local communities, and because it's an international hub airport, the UK as well. We want to be a voice, really, for Heathrow supporters to congregate around. A voice, if you like, for the silent majority. Residents, airport workers, businesses here, wider area of West London, and of course in the Thames Valley and beyond as well. So we want to rebalance the debate back Heathrow in 2014 and 2015 to make politicians aware that there is a groundswell of support for the airport. It's not just the airport here and all residents over here who don't like the airport. That is a myth, and we know that, and happily with all of you sitting here today, we're starting to prove it. And what we also know is that, I sound like I'm obsessed by polling, but it's quite a useful barometer of what is happening. There has been recent polling where residents were asked, and the majority of residents in the boroughs around the airport would vote for political candidates who supported expansion. So again, this gives a lie to the myth that if you're a politician, no one is going to vote for you because you're going to stick up for this major employer. Of course, though, there is opposition to the airport. I'm not blind. There is opposition to the airport. But I feel that the game has changed. And I feel that more and more people are getting a bit fed up of, if you like, the opposition, not only blocking Heathrow's growth, but also just running the airport down, and sort of almost as if they're glad to see it fail. And I think more and more people are fed up of these people who don't speak for them, local people who are fed up of opponents and critics who don't speak for them. And often they are making noises against Heathrow at the taxpayer's expense. And sometimes at your expense. Sometimes you're the taxpayer. You're paying for people to, if you like, criticise the airport. We think that's wrong. And even today, we've seen in the Telegraph, there was a story about how local authorities are joining forces with the airport's opponents to campaign against the airport, to campaign against those who would invest in the airport, who would invest in those jobs. Frankly, I think this is disgusting. And so this is one reason, another reason really, why it's so important to have your support. So, what has Back Heathrow done so far? Well, within the last 4 months, we have got, thank you, in the last 4 months, we've gathered around 20,000 supporters, which is a big number of supporters. 20,000 supporters, mainly in the local boroughs around Heathrow. But we need more. It's a good start. From a standing start, it's a good start, but we need many, many more. What next? Well, the Airports Commission process that I've just spoken to you about, finally, came up with a very small shortlist of options, and there's some good news and some bad news. And the good news is that Heathrow is on that shortlist. There are 2 options for Heathrow, certainly at least one of which we'll hear about in a minute from Nigel, but there are 2 options on there. One from the airport and one from an independent group which wants to see Heathrow expansion. These are good. So we've got options from Heathrow, but also there's some bad news in that our dear friend Boris, he's still about, he's still trying to get on the shortlist, he's the most vociferous opponent, and his Isle of Grain option, which would mean Heathrow closure, is still floating about in the debate. We've also got Gatwick there. As a campaign, we don't mind about Gatwick. We're relaxed about Gatwick getting another runway. And good luck to Gatwick in getting another runway, but not, in my view, at the expense of, without expanding Heathrow, which is where the problem is. It's the international hub that's full. So there's work to be done with this shortlist. A couple of things before I hand over to Nigel. Heathrow is going to need our support. Heathrow are going to be launching a 6-week consultation next week. You'll get something through your doors. Please respond to it. We will be reminding you about this as well. It's very important you do that. Nigel may elaborate on that, but it's have your say on this consultation from the airport. We've also got, as you know, the local elections coming up in May in the boroughs around here. This is another chance for you to let your local candidates know how much the airport means to you, your communities and your families. Let them know, because at the moment opponents are getting a bit of a free ride on this, but gradually we are starting to see more and more people start to speak out, and it's absolutely important that you do that. And finally, in the autumn there will be a big public consultation on all of these options that I've spoken about. Again, Heathrow opponents will be having their say. It's absolutely vital that we have our say as well. And later on we'll tell you how hopefully you may be able to help the campaign, which should be fantastic. We are dealing with a time frame of months here. It's absolutely important to just keep building up the support. We've had a great start. You guys are here today. As I said, there will be questions later, but first of all, before we go any further, I think it would be quite important to hear from someone who actually works for the airport. So I'm delighted to have Nigel Milton here. Nigel is the Director of Policy and Political Relations at the airport. And Nigel, thank you very much for coming.